Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. I'm your host Chris Pope. I hope you've enjoyed the last couple episodes, interview episodes. I hope to get some more lined up here. I've been enjoying those, and the opportunities to talk with some other trappers around the country is always an exciting thing. I always like to take that opportunity and swap stories and learn from one another. So this episode today, I am going to review Clint Locklear's book, The Mindset of a Professional. I bought this from Clint when I was at the National Trappers Convention in Springfield. $28 or something like that, and it's typical Clint fashion. I mean, it's 82 pages. I mean, it's a substantial full-size book, and it's definitely kind of what the title says. It's not trapping tactics and tips and how to catch stuff. It's the mindset specifically of kind of a fur trapper, and what it takes essentially to be a professional trapper. I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you probably plugged in and know Clint Locklear runs Predator Control Group. He is probably one of the most influential trappers in the industry. Been in the industry for a long time, and definitely knows his stuff, knows what he's doing, and obviously knows how to make a living from trapping and the fur industry. So I was excited to kind of get my hands on this book and just try to kind of get that perspective. And the one thing that I've come to kind of realize, and it is becoming more evident, more and more to me, is how impactful mindset is, and how you think and what you think about, really how you think, and whether you see a challenge as an opportunity or an obstacle. It's really is going to impact how you react to things and what opportunities that are in front of you, because it's all based on whether you see something as an opportunity or not. And one thing that came to mind, when I got to reading and thinking about this and writing my notes, is I remember when I was back in high school, I used to listen to a song. Y'all probably may have heard it. It's called "Regular Guy" by Steve Earle. And I kind of joked around with my dad at that time. I said, "Man, this is like the Ballad of the Popes. This is our family, and realistically, a lot of families." And if you've never heard it, the lyrics aren't too long. I'm gonna read through it, and maybe this won't get kicked off of YouTube. But it starts out, "I'm just a regular guy. Never get rich, but I always get by. Got me a wife and a couple of kids. Done pretty much like my daddy did. He always did the best that he could. Took care of mama and us pretty good. He never got rich, but he never did try. He was just a regular guy. Well, the world goes around, and I can't stop it, so I'll sit back and watch the sun go down. If it comes back up, then this day's a good one. I wouldn't be that surprised. I'm just a regular guy, and I work until the day that I die. I'm too young to quit and too old to hire. These days a man can't afford to retire. Didn't vote for nobody last time, because they weren't worth a trickle-down dime. But one man's promise is another man's lie, and I'm just a regular guy." And at the time, like I said, I mean, that seemed kind of very applicable, and just kind of joking. It kind of, I guess, struck me how realistic that was. And man, the more I think about it, the more I kind of hate that. The more that I see that as wasted opportunity, that all this stuff that just a regular guy. Never, it point blank says it right there. Never got rich, but I never did try. And not that my goal or anybody's goal should be to get rich, but if you want more, the opportunity is available. You may have to make it, or you may have to work really hard, but give it a try. You might not make it there on the first time, but odds are you'll get better at getting there, you know, and the more times you try, I mean, nothing, what's the old saying, nothing worth having comes easy. So anyway, that was one thing I thought of when I, like I said, when I sat down and started kind of making my notes, and just like I say, how much that mindset, how you approach life of, you know, do you see things as opportunities or obstacles? How heavy that plays in, because it's, you know, Clint talks about it a lot in this book, of, you know, there's a lot of people that would read this and they'd say, or I myself have even been guilty of it, of to an extent of, you know, saying, you know, with today's fur prices, you're not really going to make a living trapping fur. You know, you could definitely make a living in the fur industry. You know, if you can, sure, you maybe trap some fur, if you've got a nuisance business, if you know, make lures and baits and things like that. And Clint, he kind of gets into that, but initially he just talks about fur and the value of fur, and really kind of breaks it down, and to me puts it in a really practical sense of, you know, this seems like such a big, crazy, audacious goal with today's terrible fur prices compared to the fur boom, but break it down and look at it, and it makes things a little bit more realistic. So let's kind of get into it right here. You know, one of the first things that he points out, that he makes, and I'm just, you know, breezing through a lot of this stuff, but it's that you're paid on results. Forget everything else. You're not paid, no matter how much time you put in, how hard you work, you're only paid from a fur trapping standpoint now if you are catching fur and how much fur you're catching. And more than that, what is the value of the fur that you're catching? And so he gets into the idea of thinking big, because, you know, the only way that you can overcome, if you're from a fur mindset, the only way that you can overcome low fur prices is to catch more fur, right? And so I'm probably gonna jump around here. I felt like I had a better outline for this, but it's kind of loosening up on me as I go. But the gist of it is, you know, you're running on your averages, you're relying on your averages, and the biggest thing is you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan for your plan, really, and you've got to look at it really on a big picture and think really big, because you're going to from a fur trapping standpoint, which is what probably the first half of this book kind of focuses on. You're covering ground, and you're concentrating on higher valued fur, right? So you're plugging in, you're watching the fur market, you know, you're talking to your fur contacts and your buyers, and seeing what's, you know, where the market's going to be, what are the high points in the market, and that's what you're targeting. And and looking also for the other opportunities. So one of the which all gets down to, you're covering ground, you're jumping states, and you're basically chasing that high value fur. So this is one section where he kind of gives a quick rundown. So say you're starting September, October in areas where they're live markets, so down in the South primarily, and you're targeting live market coyotes, right, that are paying 50 to 100, hopefully around 75 bucks. Then as the season progresses, it starts to get cooler, you head up north, so maybe then you hit in, you know, November, you start hitting the corn country out in the Midwest, where you can really rack up coon numbers. You wrap things up there, you start getting snow and ice, so maybe you bump south and you know, start picking up some water critters, some water animals, Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana, mink, raccoon, muskrat, otter, beaver, and then February, you bump back to the east, say Georgia even, and you hit a live market fur combo there. March, the line that he's kind of got laid out here, just a imaginary line. You get back to Louisiana, hitting fur and bounty and a meat market. April, you're going north for spring beaver. And then May, you just keep going north chasing spring beaver until, the end of May. So you're talking September to May, October to May. I mean, you're talking fully 6 months out of the year, hard at it. And no doubt it's a gigantic task. But the line that he laid out, and you can get in it, breaks it down. But the line that he laid out with the animals that he caught, which was not an overly excessive average, worked out at, so these average prices that he's kind of got plugged in for this. So live market coyotes $75 each. Coon at $12 in the Midwest. You go farther south, and you got coon at $10, beaver at $18, plus a bounty mink at $15, otter. He's got a high otter number on there, $100, which we know that's not realistic now, but you never know when that's going to come. I mean, the fur market drops and ebbs and flows. So just listen to me overall. Don't key on just these numbers. Then back to Mississippi, where you got $8 coon, you got a meat market, beaver at $16 and another bounty, high dollar otters and $40 bobcat, very reasonable. Georgia for $60 live market, $35 bobcats, $7 coon, $15 beaver, $100 otter, $15 gray fox. Louisiana, $17 coon plus a meat market, $18 beaver plus a bounty, $12 mink, $35 bobcat, $100 otter. April, $20 beaver in Iowa, and then May again $20 beaver, Minnesota, Michigan, wherever they have spring beaver season. So those values, and just follow with me here, don't tune out and hit the negative button, because we're staying on the positive side here. At reasonable averages, which when I say reasonable, you're talking all day trapping, right, is $64,000 working October through May. Now that's earning your keep, and that doesn't take out expenses. That's definitely something to consider. But if you dig into it and look at his numbers and really take the time, and don't immediately be like, hit the negative button of, it's like, nobody's getting $100 anymore. $18 beavers, that's crazy. But just slow down and think about it, and you start looking at the averages, and so you knock the otters back to $25, which is more like what they averaged this past year, right? But you're talking about on the average of so few of otters versus $7 Louisiana coon's probably low. But regardless, the fact is, if you wanted to make it work, and you were willing to put in the work, and that's the huge kicker with fur trapping, right? With any kind of trapping, if you've trapped, it's work. It starts and ends with work. There's no way around it. So I jumped ahead there, and I hope I didn't overwhelm you or make you feel like I was talking too unrealistically. Let's go back to one of the things that kind of made it click for me was once he started talking about, and not to say that I'm fixing to turn and start fur trapping full time, because I am definitely not. But one of the points that he makes is where he's from, and this was written in 2006, I think, too. So this has been a little while. Where he's from in eastern Tennessee, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. A lot of folks live on $200 to $500 a week, and if that's what you're used to living on, if that's what your lifestyle is set up on, then there is you can make the trapping work if you wanted it to. And so, if you need to make $500 a week, and now $500 a week, 10 coons a day at an $8 average is excuse me, $560. Boom, right there. And I know I could definitely, and now it's going to be covering ground and putting traps out. I could easily hammer 10 coons a day. Now my average is going to be less than $8, but I can definitely average 10 coons a day for as long as probably I wanted to. And just again, that thinking, that mindset, and I hesitate to say we as trappers, because I think it's just people in general are so quick to jump on the bandwagon of pointing out all of the downsides or the obstacles versus saying, well, yeah, you know what? So the first thing a lot of folks are going to do is say, well, that doesn't include your expenses, right? Absolutely. You definitely got to consider that, because the biggest thing with this is you're running it like a business. So, you got to make payroll. If you're trapping, you are your payroll, right? So you got to make sure that you got money in your tank, for sure. But I mean, you've got wear and tear on your vehicle, fuel, lodging, down days. So you're gonna have your travel days, and your set days, and so you got to take all that into account. Food, and some of that stuff can, if you really stop and thought about it, could either be reduced or it's something you're already doing anyway. I know there's a lot of folks that eat out for lunch during the week regardless, right? So if you're used to eating out and spending $10 on lunch every day of the week anyway, then all of a sudden, if you start, that's built into your home budget, right? All of a sudden you start trapping and you spend $10 on lunch. You were doing that anyway, so that's not an additional expense. Now it's still something that you got to overcome and cover. But to me, kind of the kicker for me is, do you look at that situation and I say, all right, you need $500 a week. Well, all you got to do is catch 10 coons at $8 average. That's $560 a week. Is your first thought, well, what about your expenses? What does that leave you? Or is your first thought, well, heck, if I'm catching them in conibears, then I can also sell the skulls for $3 a piece. And, I could probably throw in, a couple coyote sets here and there, and maybe a mink set, and, pick up, again, looking for the opportunities versus the obstacles and the objections of, oh, that's not possible, or, oh, yeah, I can easily make this work. Or maybe not easily, but I could make this work. I could see where this could work. Again, and I don't think there's a lot of y'all that are listening, a lot of us that are kind of taking the mindset of, man, I want a fur trap for a living, because it is definitely a lot of work. But I'm trying what the book kind of laid out, and I really appreciate it, is if you'll open your mind up and look for the opportunities, you could make it work. So here's another scenario that he laid out here, from trapping in Louisiana. So, and this is high on some of these fur prices, but again, bear with me and look at the overall picture. One day, 8 beavers, just kind of an average day, 8 beavers at $22 fur price and a $25 bounty, $375. You could cut that fur price in half, but if you get the bounty, that's all the better. 12 coons at an $8 fur price plus a $6 meat market. One otter at $115 plus a $5 skull market. A bobcat, $100 at a taxidermist. 3 skunks, $7 for the fur and $16 for the skunk essence. Totals up to $800 a day. So, yeah, otter, you're not going to get $115. definitely could sell a skull for $5. Beaver, you're talking about 11 versus 22, best case scenario. Coon, you're talking about maybe 4. But in that time frame, heck, your meat market may be better. I don't know. So you're still in the $500 to $600 a week range. Again, just trying to think outside of the box and see. One thing that doesn't include is the casters. The value of casters right now definitely would factor in that and add some money onto the end of it. Moving on, the only other thing, I outlined that, kind of September to May. Biggest thing there is you're traveling. You're hopping, you're state hopping, you're covering ground. That's a lifestyle that if you've got a wife and kids back home, especially kids, that may be a tough sell. It is for me, for sure. So definitely just another thing to keep in mind. Now, the kind of a little bit more of the meat and the little bit more of the interesting part is, this is straight from the book. You need to understand and really believe what you are worth on the open market. You need to understand that you are skilled and have more of a specialty than almost anyone you meet. Most trappers feel that they are at the bottom of the food chain. This is up to the individual trapper to believe this or not. And he's talking about making money and, a professional trapper approaching it as more of a businessman than a trapper. And this really sums it up, and I really appreciate. Fur trapping to me is not something I do, it is what I am. I just happen to realize that fur trapping is an impractical way to make a living for the long haul. So there, I liked how he started out the book kind of from the fur trapping perspective. And you know what? If that's something that you really want to do and you want to devote a season to it, give it a try. Plan it out. Look at your fur prices. I was looking at, I pulled up, NAFA, the May sale, and was just looking, and yeah, overall fur prices kind of stink. But if you were to cherry pick, and look at some opportunities, there definitely are some opportunities there if you're willing to put in the work. Beaver, Eastern beaver, $11 average. Otter, $26 average. Raccoon, Eastern, $5 average. Probably pretty fair. Coyote, Eastern, $53 average. Bobcat, North Central, $71 average. So there, if you're willing to kind of move and travel and really get after it, that's the biggest thing, is getting after it and trying to target, where could you potentially, maybe hit the Midwest and try to hit coyotes hard because they're high value, and then also try to hammer some coons in between that. Where could you try to target water animals and take advantage of a 48 or 72 hour trap check to run 3 different trap lines and really rack up you rack up your numbers on kill sets on raccoons, otters, beavers, muskrats. You come down to the south, try to target live markets and bobcats and gray fox. Where could you have a meat market? Where could you potentially also combine, a bounty in there? There are options there, and I like presenting that. But then I like where he's transitioning to of, those are options. But in reality, there is potentially a better way to get after it. And so I think that's kind of, I don't know. I've never talked to Clint about this, but I definitely think when he was first getting in the industry, he was trying to making a name for himself and really, putting up the numbers and showing that he could produce the catches. But, well, it wasn't in, I'm trying to think of which book it was that I've read now, but, to start out with, he was getting paid to trap. He was getting paid to trap beavers. and he was getting paid to trap coyotes. And that's kind of what he built his business into with the Predator Control Group, and also, and he formed that in a way that he could trap those animals, get paid to trap those animals, and then also where it was legal, take advantage of using the furs too. And so there you got your double whammy. You've got I don't remember if it's in this book or another one, but he talked about, it kind of adds an exponential factor to it of if you're getting paid so much a day to do the predator control, well then, if you can get out there and really hammer the predators when they're prime, you're doubling potentially or more your check, and the impact that can have. He also gets into, other alternatives, he doesn't focus, he kind of, I guess, gives kind of a broad brush. So he talks about fur trapping, and that's kind of where he says specifically, I just realized that fur trapping is an impractical way to make a living for the long haul. Bounty trapping, control work, live market, meat market, offals, taxidermist market, and really to maximize your profit, you're going to have to try to figure out the intricacies and navigate and be able to capitalize on each one of those markets where it's legal and where you can. The one thing, as I've been working towards trying to grow a nuisance trapping business and doing some control work as well, is there's a lot, so this is straight out of the book, there's a lot more to running a successful control business than trapping. Trappers just want to trap, and they see everything else as a distraction. Like it or not, the everything else is just as, if not more important than the trapping. Man, that's what I've seen in my short tenure. I'm not sitting here telling you I'm an expert, telling you I know everything, but just in the short time frame that I've been trying and working towards growing to a nuisance trapping, a nuisance wildlife business on the side, the trapping's the easy part. It's easy to go out and look and say, well, you got flying squirrels, this is how we're going to get them out, this is how we're going to keep them out. The hard part is getting in front of that customer to begin with. And that absolutely hits the nail on the head, that as a trapper, I'm not interested in, I'm not as interested in going and knocking on doors and figuring out how to advertise and figuring out how to get myself in front of people. I'm interested in catching critters, but the trapping, and I think it's like that with a lot of businesses. I guess kind of the passion businesses is I've got good friends that are loggers and been dealing with the logging industry for a long time. And one of the things that seems very evident in the logging industry is you've got a lot of loggers, especially the old school loggers, that all they want to do is log. They are not business minded. They are not, they couldn't tell you how much it costs them to run their logging crew, because they don't work, they don't care. As long as their wife or their bookkeeper or whoever keeps paying everybody and doesn't hit the panic button about running out of money, all they want to be doing is running the logging business. Same way with trapping. All trappers want to do is be trapping. We don't want to be handling our, entering customer information and sending invoices and trying to track down payments, but all that stuff is as important if you're truly treating it like a business. So from that standpoint, I kind of got off on a tangent there, but Clint mentions all these other kind of avenues, and again, to try to capitalize on and make the most of what you're catching, you need to be utilizing all of those, even as a hobby trapper, as a fair weather trapper, vacation trapper, whatever you want to call it. Still, my objective is to try to make as much money as I can at doing it, and so I'm looking for all those opportunities for skull markets, for meat markets where it's legal, and not all of that stuff is legal in every state. So that's another kind of intricacy, but I appreciated the open-mindedness or the path that this book lays out of, I guess, really stopping. If you're open-minded enough to read it and take it in without getting critical and saying, man, that doesn't seem as outlandish as I thought it would. And then just, kind of the way he wraps it up is just basically a call to action. He wraps it up saying, get off the couch and get your butt in high gear now. If this is something, whatever it is, I mean, he specifically says, let's see, where is it at? I should have highlighted this. So it's up to you. If you want to be a peacock bass fishing guide in South America, start learning Spanish and studying the Amazon River. If you want to face down an enraged snot slinging Cape buffalo in Africa, get your gun and step in front of one. If you want to be a pro trapper, pull up your hip boots and get to work. If you want my job, there just happens to be an opening, and the person taking the application is the guy that looks back at you in the mirror. So I like that, how that wraps up. Of if you've got a dream of whatever it is, if it's trying to make more money trapping, if it's trying to start a nuisance trapping business, if it's being a hunting guide, if it's owning a car wash business, I don't know. Are you dreaming about it, or are you doing something about it? Because that's what's going to separate the folks that never get rich but never did try, that dreamed about it their whole life, from actually, and the Sam Waltons that actually went out there and put one foot in front of the other every day, trying to make that dream happen and doing what they could to make that dream happen. So I hope all that made sense to you. I hope that is was worthwhile to listen to, and truly I hope that it did open, at the very least, kind of open your eyes that the things that seem like they're impossible, so to speak, if it's something that you're interested in, if it's something that you really want to do, stop for a minute and think through it. Think through it rationally, think through it logically, think of all the alternatives, and is it that far-fetched? Is it that outlandish? Because it's probably not. Some parts of it, at least, are probably attainable. There's a lot of us trappers that would like to start a wildlife control business, or to have our own business in general, but kind of like what it said, you got to know what you're worth. You got to recognize something that I've been struggling with lately is you got to recognize that you have a skill and you're meeting a need for people, just like a plumber, just like a mechanic, just like all these other people that provide a service are. And you can't be bashful about putting a value that is truly what you feel you are worth. Because if you look at it, there are some really large companies that are in the wildlife and nuisance trapping game. A lot of the major pest control companies are transitioning, or have divisions, or are starting divisions, or running divisions of wildlife divisions as well, because they see, they've got the customers that are there and ready and calling them already, and they see the opportunity there of providing the specialized service. And I've had plenty of people that never call me back after I give them a quote and give them a price, and that frustrates me, because I want that business, honest to goodness. But at the same time, I'm not underselling myself, and that's all part of the business, I guess. Is knowing what you're worth, feeling confident in that you're worth that, and what you provide, the service that you provide, because what, not everybody knows how to crawl through an attic and set flying squirrel traps, or remove a raccoon out of the wall, or a skunk, or a coyote that's eating calves. And somebody says you're too expensive, that's fine. Odds are They might find somebody that can do it less, that may do a good job, or that beaver may keep chewing trees and chewing trees and chewing trees until they call you back and say, hey, I'm going to have to replace all of my landscaping trees. Come out here and get this beaver. I'm ready to pay. And that's one, I would say, upside in the our field is if it's just left to lay like it is, the critters most of the time aren't going anywhere, so they're just making your sales pitch more and more appealing every day that goes by. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the kind of the ramble. I wouldn't say this book is a slam dunk read for any trapper. But if you are at all interested in, having a business, growing a business, just thinking about, business, I think that the mindset that's talked about, and there's tons of books that talk about mindset, but that mindset is so powerful, and I think from that perspective, in the perspective of somebody that has done it, I think that's very valuable. So one last thing that I wanted to say about the mindset of a professional, like I said, this is not a how-to trap. This is not something that I would necessarily recommend for a beginner. But if you, I think it's worth reading, especially if you have any desire or want to try to make any kind of part of your living from the trapping industry. And one thing to me, honest to goodness, that would have been worth the purchase of the book wholeheartedly is a section, I'm not going to go into it, but a section titled Convention Life. It's on page 59. I'll lay it right out there for you, but Clint specifically talks about kind of what I feel like a lot of trappers may kind of almost aspire to of having a supply business, and going around to the conventions and selling bait and lure and traps, and just overall, he didn't get into specifics, but just talking kind of about the margins and what that really means, because that would have saved me some headache, and it would have been more than worth the purchase of the book. So if you are at all have ever thought about how you might think it would be neat or beneficial, or an additional source of income to sell some trapping supplies, that little section alone, if you take that and really give that some thought, will open your eyes to the realities of how you might have to make that work. So it's kind of self-explanatory. There's a lot of folks that are kind of in that. It seems like there's a lot of folks, a lot of interest around that, but when you get to the margins, and from my perspective, I've messed around with it some, with selling, kind of packages and kits, and I sold some traps, and I struggled not only on the margin side, but also on the shipping side, especially with traps, to make it make sense. And I don't know if it's, the bigger trapping supply dealerships are largely to the north, and I don't know if it's, they get a lot of walk-in traffic, and where they're not shipping the bulk of their product, but in the south, you're doing a lot of shipping, and that's tough to overcome. So anyway, that was the last thing I wanted to leave you on. It's definitely a good read, a worthwhile read, if you've got the mindset of trying to do something professionally, and not just kind of hobby and tinker around. But if you have ever thought that you might enjoy or appreciate or make it worthwhile to run a trapping supply business, I would definitely recommend you pick up this book and read to page 59 and flip to page 59 and start reading, because it's definitely, it'll give you a good heads up of what potentially to expect. So not trying to deter anybody, but just trying to understand the reality of what you truly can expect from that. So anyway, with that, now I'm going to wrap it up for good, for this time anyway.